Okay, we're answering that question that we asked. The question was, Hanukkah generally is all about Mesiras Nefesh from the highest level, which is that place in our soul that is immutably connected to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. That is called the essence of our soul. That is the source of the highest level of Mesiras Nefesh. Mesiras Nefesh can be, as we said yesterday, it's just important to go over this over and over so it's something completely clear to people. Mesiras Nefesh can be something that comes from Seichel. I can make a rational decision that it's worth giving my country. I would imagine most people in the American Army probably made that rational decision. Or most armies. Someone who volunteers for an army. Okay? They're not interested in dying, but they have made the decision that they're willing to because they think it's important that if someone has to defend the country and they're willing to be those people, and if Chas v'Shalom they have to die for that, so they'll die for that. Okay. It can also come from a place deeper than that in us that's super conscious called Ratzon, will. Will is not a conscious power. Will powers consciousness, right? The reason you think about what you think about is because you want to. But what's the difference between conscious reality and superconscious reality? Or another term for that is also subconscious reality. What's the difference between those two states of reality? Conscious reality I have control over, immediate control. If I don't want to talk, I won't. I don't have to. I'm talking because I want to. Now, there's a good reason that I want to, right? I'm a teacher at the front of a class. It would be rather ridiculous not to talk, etc. Okay, say it. But the bottom line is, if my desire not to talk were the single most powerful thing happening in my life, then I wouldn't talk, right? Okay, fine. It's not the most powerful thing happening in my life. Might be my desire to talk is the most powerful, in which case I'll talk in places where I probably shouldn't talk, like during Kaddish, during Chazor Sashatz. If the person has this overwhelming desire to talk, so they probably shouldn't. They should not. It says in Shulchan Aruch, you're not allowed to talk during. Okay. Sometimes you see people doing that. Why? Because they have a will to. If you would ask them intellectually, are you allowed to talk? They'd probably know the halacha that says, no, you're not allowed to. But somehow their will to talk overcame their intellectual understanding that they shouldn't. Okay. But what do we think about? What do we think about? We think about what we want to think about. If we don't want to think about it, then don't think about it, right? I might have to, it might take some energy to push it out of my head because I'm thinking about it. Okay, fine. But I have control over what I think. It's harder to have control over that, but I still have control. I certainly have control over what I say, and I have control over what I do. What do I not have immediate control over? What I want. I can't not want something. Right? You want something, so you want it. That doesn't mean you have to express that desire in thought, speech, and action, right? Which is conscious me. But that desire's there. I can't not want it. Over time, I can do away with that desire. If I think it's a negative desire, over time I can work on not expressing it, and sooner or later it'll disappear. 10 years after he stops smoking, the cigarette smoker doesn't want a cigarette anymore, right? Probably less time, obviously, but we'll give him a full 10 years, right? 10 years later, he probably finds the smell of cigarette smoke as disgusting as everybody else and can't imagine how he ever did that. Okay. 10 years before that, he had an overwhelming desire for a cigarette. Even when he had finished with the physical addiction, he still had an emotional desire for that cigarette. Okay. And he couldn't get rid of that. It took a while. So Ratzon is a level higher than intellect. Power is intellect. It's the source of intellect. Why do I think what I think? Because I want to. Don't want to think it, so I don't think it. Move it away. Mesiras Nefesh can come from that place, which is deeper. Deeper place in our soul. I want to give up my life for God. Okay. Not only do I intellectually do that deeply. Okay. And then there's the highest level of Mesiras Nefesh, and that's the Mesiras Nefesh of the Chashmonim at the time of Hanukkah. And this is a uniquely Jewish expression of Mesiras Nefesh because it's coming from a place in the soul that only Jews have, called the essence of the soul. And the essence of the soul is a place in your godly soul that is completely and totally connected to the Eibishter. And our question was, if Hanukkah is all about that, which it is, and that's why it's an 8-day holiday, because the 8 day relates to a level beyond nature, the natural order, beyond our intellect, even beyond our will. Okay, so if that's the case, so then why did we make up this beautiful understanding? We didn't make it up. Why is it that we understand that the three different miracles of Hanukkah relate to three different levels in our relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu and three different aspects of the unity of God? Did you get in the end? Did you go to it already?
It's open at 7:30.
No, I opened it. It turns out they asked you have a key. I said, oh yeah, there's the key in that box.
No, I'll go after.
Okay, so I'll stop. Leave at 8:30, even if I didn't stop talking, leave at 8:30. Okay. One of the guys waiting outside said maybe it's the key, and do you have the keys? I don't use this mixer, so I never think about it.
I had left
But the key is in one of those lock boxes in a drawer, so I know the combination. So I opened it up, and sure enough, the key worked. Okay, so sorry about that. I should have thought about that when I saw you guys standing outside. I just don't use the mikvah, so my head's not in how it works.
My dress threw you off.
No. Just kidding. Your dress, your lack thereof. I told him there's naked people standing outside the mikvah. You better come quick. You're going to be in trouble. The police will come. Okay. So the Hanukkah is all about the third level of Mesiras Nefesh. If that's the case, how can we say that the first level of Hanukkah, the Milchama, was a revelation of Yehuda Tata, the unity of God recognized within the context of the seemingly independent existence of the world. And we overcome that independence and realize that the world is not really independent of God. It's a place where the true mission of the world is to serve God. That's Yehuda Tata, lower level unity. There is a lower level, but I recognize the unity of God there. That's Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Eliyah Leved that we say after Shema Yisrael. 24 letters. 24th of Kislev, the Milcham. It's a review of the whole Mimer because we're going to finish the Mimer soon. The second level is the war, is the Pak Shemen, finding the Pak Shemen, which happened on the 25th. The 25th is the number of letters in Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. What's that? Hashem Echad. The world doesn't have a separate existence from Hashem. The world is simply an expression of Hashem's existence. All right? Okay. Yehudi Ilah, upper level unity. And then there's a level beyond both of those called Havaya de La'ela, Yudke Vavke, from above, meaning there is no world, there is nothing but the Eibishter. Efes is Ulasari. It's not that the world is the Eibishter. There's no world. On the deepest level of existence, if we define existence in its most essential form, the world doesn't have that. All right? What is existence? Well, ultimately, what is existence? The most powerful expression of godly existence is that it exists by virtue of itself. It doesn't have a source in anything else, which is very, very hard for us to imagine. What does that mean? Meaning, when you think of God, most people don't, but contemplating the existence of the Kadosh Baruch Hu himself, not God the creator, not godly light, just the Kadosh Baruch Hu himself, because what's light? Light is something which emerges from a source. So even godly light, even the most powerful, highest, loftiest, most holy expressions of infinite godly revelation have a source in a place higher than them. What's the highest place beyond anything else, which is the source of our soul and the source of the Mesiras Nefesh that is the whole story of Hanukkah? What is that place? It's called the essence of God. What's the one thing we can say about the essence of God, other than we don't understand anything about it? Leis machshava tvisa beichlal. There is no thought that can comprehend it. When we say that, we're talking about that level of God. What's the one thing we can say about it? It
wasn't created.
It wasn't created. It exists by virtue of itself. It just is. Where did he come from? He didn't. Who put him there? No one put him there. When did he get there? There's no when. It just is. What does he do? Nothing. What's the purpose of existence? Doesn't have one. Why is he there? It just is. Where did he come from? He didn't. That's impossible to understand. Like, what does that mean? Well, that's why you're the only level you can truly, the only level in you with which you can truly connect to that level of Elokus. It's not intellect, because intellect has no place for that. That power of the soul is called Emunah. Faith. What's Emunah? Emunah is the power of the soul that transcends intellect. The world says you don't understand, you just believe. That's okay, fine, if you have an improper understanding of what belief is. Right? But what's Emunah? Emunah is a power of the soul that allows you to connect to a level of God that's beyond intellect. Emunah comes from that place called the essence of your soul, which is one with the essence of God, and is rooted in the essence of God. Very, very hard to figure out what that is. Okay, fine. That's where Mesiras Nefesh comes from. So then why are we saying these other levels? The third level is already the revelation of that level completely beyond. But those two below, what are they doing here? Hanukkah is all about the third level. It's an 8-day holiday because it's a completely transcendent level of godliness revealed in everything. Oh, so the Rebbe told us up until now, yes, the source of the Mesiras Nefesh, the source of the self-sacrifice of the Hashmonaim was Yechidah Shebenefesh. No question. The essence of the soul. No question. But that essence of the soul penetrated into the revealed powers of their soul, their will and their intellect and their emotions, to such an extent that even though they were fully aware of the existence of the opposition, which is usually not the case when there's a revelation of the essence of the soul, because when there's a revelation of that level of reality, there is no other existence. All there is God. So even though they had reached a state in their own personal connection to who they are and what they're really all about, which is they were essentially connected to the essence of themselves, which is connected to the essence of God, and they realized that there is no way possible to be separate from God, and they were willing to give up their lives for that. That penetrated down into their conscious reality. They said, okay, we now have to go out and fight the enemy. What enemy? Well, there is an enemy. There is a level of reality in which there's an enemy. There's a level of reality where there's no enemy. And that's the level that's shining in our souls right now. That being said, we have to take that and go fight the enemy. Which is on a certain level a contradiction in terms, but on the other level it's a very, very deep thing, because it means that the essence of their soul is resonating in their conscious reality, which is really quite astounding. And that's what the Rebbe says in the first line on page Kuf Gimel. It's relevant to the revealed powers of their soul. So they're not simply transcending the world, they're actually bringing about a revelation of the essence of themselves in the world. So they're willing to go to battle. So we read some of these lines, let's just read them quickly again, and we'll try to finish this paragraph at least today. Therefore, even the light, excuse me, that's beyond the natural state, that was drawn down through their tremendous Mesiras Nefesh, the level of godliness they were connecting to was revealed down here in this world, because they're in this world. So they revealed that level in this world through their Mesiras Nefesh, through their self-sacrifice. And how did that light express itself? There was a miracle. The miracle of the fact that, and this is a quote from Al-Anisim, that you gave the mighty into the hands of the weak and the many in the hands of the few. But that nace, that miracle, was meluvash b'teva, it was clothed in nature. Yehuda Tato. Why? That's what God wanted. But why? Well, we'll see, because there's this incredible process in Hanukkah, from one level to another level. The first revelation of this incredibly powerful godly light was actually within the context of the natural world. They won a war. They had to go to war, and they won the war. The Greeks didn't just turn around and walk away. Right? When the Romans, famous Unclus. Who's Unclus? What did Unclus do? Right, he wrote of the most famous translation of the Torah into Aramaic, which we say every week. It's printed on the side, and we say it every week. Every week we go over the parsha twice in Hebrew and once in Aramaic, called Shnayim Mikra Targum. Right, the Friday afternoon we say over the whole parsha twice in the Ivrit and once. Now, if you can't read that fast, okay, so you'll wait until you can read that fast. But at some point you should start doing that, because it's an important thing to do. It's in Shulchan Aruch. It's one of the things there. Okay. So Targum Unclus is pretty important. Who's Unclus? Unclus was a convert. From where? From a noble Roman family who came here to Eretz Yisrael and converted to Judaism. And his cousin, who was the emperor, kept sending legions of soldiers to bring him back to Rome, right? And what would happen? So miraculously, he didn't have to fight anybody. They would come to his house, knock on his door, and within a few minutes, they all wanted to convert to Judaism based on their conversations with Uncle. So this kept happening until finally the emperor said, look, you're not allowed to talk to him. You can't say anything to him. Just go there and grab him and bring him. And I don't remember exactly how that one all worked out, but they also fell pretty quickly. Right? I think they asked him a question or something, right? It might be he kissed him. This was on the way out. I don't remember exactly what it was. Right? But there was something, right? So that's not fighting. That's Uncle expressing his essential connection to a Kadosh Baruch Hu in such a way that affects everything around him and they just melt. Right? And is it miraculous? Completely miraculous, getting all these Romans to convert to Judaism. Now, we're not looking for converts, but I mean, that's just what they wanted to do. So if someone comes and says that's what they want to do, so that's what you do. Good, okay, amazing. That's not what happened Hanukkah. Hanukkah, they had to go out and fight. Okay. I am a luvish betevis, clothed in nature. The same as, furthermore, I mean, not just stum in nature, but teva da ilam hazeh tachten. It was rooted in the nature of this lower world. Shaklipers gavrim by. And what's this world naturally? A world where concealment, hiddenness, and ultimately what you and I might call evil seems to be the most powerful force. Right? Crime doesn't pay? Nonsense. If crime doesn't pay, no one would steal. Of course crime pays. Elamaz is a place where you can get ahead by being evil. Is that a good thing to do? No, it's a stupid thing to do. But does it work? Of course it works. It works very well. That's why people do it. Right? Okay, if it didn't work, no one would do it. Shemenagdim. Who was the opposition that they were facing? Hem giborim verabim. They're strong and they're many. And in spiritual terms, what does that mean? The powers of darkness in this world are very, very powerful. Right? You might have noticed that your Yetzer Hara isn't such a weakling, such a wimp. As a matter of fact, he seems to be pretty smart and pretty powerful because he might take over our lives now and then. Okay. Certainly not, he's not I mean, at a certain level we can feel sorry for him, hopefully, but that's only once we have a certain control over him. Right? But he's pretty powerful. It's not like he goes away. Even if you defeat him, he's still there. Okay. That's Elam Hazeh. And what do you have to do? Tzarich lilchem kenegdem. So you have to go to battle against them, the Greeks. So that's the first expression of this incredible connection to the Eibishter. So we were talking about that a lot yesterday in terms of a person's own connection. On one hand, we understand that we're essentially connected to the Eibishter. But I still have an Nefesh. How can it be if I'm essentially connected to God and that's my true essential existence, that's who I really am, it's the real me? How can it be that conscious me is so powerfully aware of this contrary force in my life? Because that's life in Olam Hazeh. And what's the idea? The idea is to bring a certain consciousness of the essential connection into my encounters with Olam Hazeh and realize that those encounters are just to reveal God, not to bring about the opposite of godliness, even though that might be something I do now and then. V'yesh leimar. This is why the Maimon says the nes and nitzochen and milchama hu yichud tata. That's why we relate to the nes of the victory of the war as yichud tata, lower level unity. Even though shegam nes zeh, that also this miracle Nimshach was ultimately drawn down from where? What was the true source of this miracle? The Mesiras Nefesh of the Chashmonaim to go to war in the first place. Meaning the true source of the miracle was something completely transcendent. And yet the miracle that was a response to that was clothed in the most imminent form. A war. Even though this victory was also ultimately drawn down from the light, Shalamayla, that's beyond the Ishtalshalis, the natural order. Ki ha'or, Shalamayla Mishtalshalis, this level of light that's from beyond the natural order, Shenimshach b'neis zeh, that was drawn down as a result of this miracle, not as a result, it was drawn down in this miracle. Haya b'levush. It was expressed in a way shenoisen makim lemetzias v'yeshus, such that it gave space. It allowed for existence and yeshus. What's yeshus? An appreciation of my own existence. Yeshus doesn't, Yeshus, if expressed negatively, is of course a terrible thing. But Yeshus, just being aware of the fact that I exist, isn't necessarily a terrible thing. If I'm able to be mevatel the notion of Yeshus that I'm independent. The most powerful expression of Yeshus is my independence from God. That's not true. I'm not independent, simply an expression of. Okay. But the fact that I'm aware of my own existence, that's really quite an incredible gift that God gave us all. It's called existing. That's pretty cool. Right? Existing is a pretty cool thing to do. Okay. Now, I can get carried away by that and think that I really exist, that it's really all about me, that my life is all about me and expressing me and becoming the best me I can become. And I can do this all in spiritual terms also. It's all just me. My spiritual elevation and my spiritual growth and my life and my agenda and what I want to do. Okay. So a person can do all sorts of good things within the context of being a complete and total yesh. They're just completely absorbed by themselves and in themselves. Okay. So is that good? Well, what they're doing is good, but the panemius of it isn't so good. Because they'd be doing it all because it's all for themselves. What did they leave out of the equation? God. God's there because he's very useful for me, because I realize that God can be part of the equation that helps me reach who I want to be and the greatness I want to achieve. And I couldn't achieve that without God. But not that God's doing it, I'm doing it, but God, because there's a God, I believe in God. And so, of course, I can achieve incredible levels of holiness by virtue of the fact that Baruch Hashem, it's out there. It's all about me and my holiness and my religiosity and my growth and my spiritual growth and my personal growth and my emotional growth and my this growth and that growth. Okay. Some growths aren't healthy. Some growths we take out. If they're benign, so maybe we can leave them there. But if they're not, so then we have to take them out. Okay. So I can live my life that way. It's all about me. Now, is that person living a bad life? No, he's a great guy. He's an amazing guy. But it's still missing a rather important component, and that component is called bittul. What does bittul mean? Bittul means that I understand that even though I am a yesh, I am a created existence, therefore I'm not God. Right? Not the guy thinks he's God. But I'm not the Eibishter. I'm separate from the Eibishter to the extent that he created me. I understand that the purpose of that whole reality is to express God's agenda and not my own. What's God's agenda? He wants to be revealed in Elam Hazeh. Why? I don't know, and it doesn't matter. He doesn't know. It's a taiva by him too. That's what Chazal say, right? The Medrash that talks about Dir B'Tachtonim, the dwelling place in the lower realms. What does it say? It said God had a taiva for a dwelling place in the lower realms. What's a taiva? A taiva is something I can't explain rationally. I know, an urge, yeah. It's a hard word to translate into English, but a taiva. I mean, what does it actually mean? In Panemius, when we explain the difference between, it means a will, a desire. Okay, so does Ratzon. Ratzon also means a will and a desire. So what's the difference between a Ratzon and a taiva? Generally in Chassidus, if we are trying to understand the difference between those two, because we're emphasizing the difference between those two, there's a lot they have in common, but there's also things that differentiate between one and the other. What differentiates between the will called Ratzon and the taiva, the desire called taiva? Seichel. Ratzon, I want a drink of water. Why? Well, I'm thirsty. It's not a taiva. It's a Ratzon. Perfectly reasonable to want a drink of water. I'm thirsty. All right? I want a cup of hot tea. Oh, well, actually, the other way around, right? Guy comes in from this weather and says, I feel like a cold beer. What? What did you just say? What do you mean? That's a taiva. Why in the world would anybody want to drink a cold beer after being soaking wet out there? It's really raining out there. I mean, it was. I don't know what it's doing now. It's cold and raining. Feels like 4 when I looked before I left my house this morning. And I had to put the hood on top of my hat because it was pouring. And sitting down on the bus, I realized that my raincoat was nice and keeping me nice and dry inside, but by the time I sat on it for 15 minutes on the bus, my posterior was also wet. Okay, it was pretty wet out there this morning. Okay, the last thing anybody would rationally want coming in from that would be a cold drink. Right? Okay, so that would be a taiva. Coming in on a boiling hot Yerushalayim summer day, flushed and sweaty, just it's baking out there. Oh, I feel like a cup of tea. What? I don't know. I've had this taiva for a cup of tea for the last 5 minutes. Completely unreasonable. Okay, that's called a taiva. The Abish had a taiva for a dwelling place in the low rooms. That's the language Chazal used. Nit avelo. He had a taiva. Why do they use that language? Because it can't be explained. What does that mean? Not by you and me. God can't explain it to you rationally because it's coming from a deeper place in God beyond his rationale, beyond his chokhmah, which is one of his powers, but not him. It's coming from the essence of him. Why does he want that? Kacha. Right? Ask the highest level of godly wisdom. Why did you have a taiva for dir b'tachtonim? I'll say, it's a taiva. What are you asking questions? And what do Chassidim say about taiva? By a taiva, fragt men nit kein kasha. By a taiva, a person doesn't ask a question. Why do you have a taiva for a cup of tea? What kind of stupid question is that? What do you mean, why do I have a taiva for a cup of tea? I don't know. I don't know either. I have a taiva for a cup of tea. Why are you asking me a dumb question? Right? Why do you want a cup of tea? Oh. What would his answer be? I don't know. I have a taiva. If he walks in and says, gee, I really want a cup of hot tea, you might ask him, why do you want a cup of hot tea? You're all red and hot and sweaty. I don't know. I have a taiva. That would be his answer, which means there's no answer. I don't know. But I do. Okay. So the Eibishter wanted a dir b'tachtonim once. So he wants a dir b'tachtonim. Okay, so then what's my agenda if I've experienced the level of bittul yesh? To give God a dir b'tachtonim. I am aware of my own existence. I'm aware of the world. I'm aware of the fact that there's a nefesh bahamis. I'm aware of the fact that there's a battle to be won. Okay, that I'm aware of the fact that the world can be a place of darkness. I'm aware of all of that. And yet still want to ultimately use that whole reality to reveal God's purpose in that, which is he wants to be revealed down here. How? Torah, mitzvahs, doing good things. That's how we reveal him down here. Mm-hmm. And ultimately that'll bring to Mashiach, which is the ultimate revelation of him down here. That's what we want. Why? Because that's what he wants. That's called bittul yesh. Yehuda Tatah. Lower level unity. There is a lower level, but I use it to express God's unity. Not my own thing, God's thing. Val derech ha-mesiras nefesh of Chanukah, similar to the mesiras nefesh of Chanukah. Shagilui di yechida, the revelation of their yechida shebenefesh, the revelation of the essence of the soul in the Chashmonaim, that they were willing to do what they did. They were willing to give up their life because they refused to bend a knee to the Greeks. Haya bislavshus, it was ultimately clothed, in other words, expressed, b'keiches hagilim, in their revealed powers, that they realized that there's a battle to fight. Right? We'll look at footnote 34. Re'eh b'maimer, the shnas tafresh tzadiches, that's the source of this maimer. Shaneis the nitzachon ha-melchama b'chav daled kislev, the nace of the victory of the battle that was on the 24th of Kislev, chaf daled oisius, the 24 letters of Baruch Shem Kaved Malchus Eliel Voed, which we say after Shema every day with a whisper. Where did that come from? Baal Yedei Melchama, the bittul yesh. In a revealed form, it came through the battle of bittul yesh. There is an existence of the world, but I'm going to battle to make that world a place where God is revealed and where God's agenda is what runs things. That's how it was expressed, even though it's coming from a much higher place in the Chashmonaim. So then what happened next in Hanukkah? This incredible progression in the holidays, such an amazing way of understanding what Hanukkah is all about. Because there were 3 miracles. The or at that time was drawn down in a higher fashion. What was that? Shumatzu pach echad, that they found a flask, chosum b'chaisma shel kohen gadol, that was sealed with the seal of the kohen gadol. And what's that? Oh, so that, interestingly enough, is a much higher place in reality where there is no opposition. And that seems to be the third level. You see why that's still only the second level. But it's not so much that I'm overcome by the existence of the opposition. No, what does it mean? And this is explained all over Chassidus. What does it mean that they found a flask of oil that was sealed with the seal of the Kohen Gadol? That they found something that comes from a place, transcendent place, a miraculous place, that the Greek can't see. Because the Greek is shmerel. The Greek can't see a miracle. The Greek can't see that level of reality. Meaning, theoretically, that flask could have been in the middle of the room. What does that flask represent? In Ruchnius. In Gashmius, it's a, I assume it's probably made of clay. It's a clay thing holding a bunch of oil. Okay. But what is it in Ruchnius? It's a level of reality that the Greek can't see. He can't see a miracle. He has to explain it in natural terms, even if his explanation is stupid. Right? I remember hearing explanations about the splitting of the Red Sea. What did some people say? Tides. It was all tides. That's a pretty stupid thing to say. Why? Well, if you really think it's tides, why don't you go to the Red Sea and see if the tides work in such a way that there could be 12 lanes of dry, and in between each lane of dry, there's a wall of water that you could see fish in, the ultimate aquarium, right? So, and each tribe walked through their own path. Okay, you don't believe that part of the story. Fine, you don't believe that part of the story because that's supernatural. I don't believe in that. Okay, see if the tides would allow 3 million people to walk through on dry land. Forget just one path. The tides do that? I understand. You want to be scientific? So be scientific. Go find me a tide that does that. But the Greek will say that. Why? He'll say anything in order that it shouldn't be miraculous. The man in the desert, what do the Greeks say it was? I mean, when I say Greeks, I mean the Jews who follow the Greeks. Right? What are you going to hear in a Reformed temple about man in the desert? What was it? Mushrooms. Mm-hmm. Mushrooms sprout up in the morning, right? I mean, mushrooms. Fungus that was edible. Good. Great. You're so intelligent and so sophisticated. Go to the Sinai desert and see if there's enough mushrooms that pop out of the ground every morning to feed 3 million people twice a day. If it's there, I'm with you. You want to be scientific? Be scientific.
Even that would be a miracle, but that's just like
yes,
a dumb miracle.
Okay, but you have to clothe it in nature. Why do you have to clothe it in nature? Because I can't stand the existence of a miracle. Why not? Because then I have to change. It's very, very threatening, a miracle. Because if there's a miracle, there's something bigger than me. Oh my gosh, I don't want there to be anything bigger than me. I want my intellect to be the ultimate arbiter of truth, which means I'm God. God's made in my image. I'm not made in his, he's made in mine. That's very challenging. That's very threatening. Because as soon as I believe that, then, okay, so then who am I, what am I, and what am I about? I think I told you that story about that guy from Asia Tower, right? A friend of mine used to teach in Asia Tower. It's an amazing story. He told me this story 35 more. I say 35 years ago. I don't want to date myself too much, but it was actually more than 35 years. It's embarrassing, but it was. Because it was, we moved away. I remember where it was. We were living in a certain place at that point, and it was a Shabbos afternoon. We made a Shabbos together with he had a program in the old city, and I had some guys sitting and learning where I was living. And we made a Shabbos together. And we moved from there 36 years ago. So it had to be more than that. Whatever. Say 35, I'll feel better. 35 years ago, he's told an amazing story at Shalashudis, sitting in Farbrengen late Shabbos afternoon. And he said he used to work in educator, and he was close with Bachrim and in educator. I mean, it's in the old city, so what can you do in educator? That's a nice thing to do. Go for late night walks with Bachrim through the holy little alleyways of the old city and talk about God. And, the old city is a special place, has a special feel. Okay. So he was walking through the alleyways in the streets with a particular bacher who he was very close to, and this bacher had been there for 2, 3, 4 months, and he loved every minute of it. And the bacher told him, "I'm leaving." He says, "Why are you leaving? You love it here." He said, "I know. That's why I'm leaving." So he said, "What does that mean?" He said, "Look, Rabbi, I'll tell you the truth. If I stay here any longer, I'm going to believe in God. And if there's a God, then I'm not. And I want to be. So I'm leaving before you get me." And he left. And David said something very real. He said, that guy believed in God more than anybody I've ever met. Because what did he understand? If there's a God, then there's not me. Because if I define existence by what he has, well, I don't have that. If there's no God and this is what there is, so then I have as much as anybody else, as anything else. I exist at least as much as the rock, probably a little more, because in all fairness, the rock can't do too many sophisticated things, but I can. Okay. But if there's actually a God that created all this, and I mean, just talk about God the creator, forget about higher levels of Elokus, which is what the Mimer is talking about. Just God the creator. So if there's God the creator, so then I guess it's about him and not about me. And I'm going to define existence by what he has and not by what I have. Well, obviously what he has is not the same level of existence that I have, so I guess his is with a capital E and mine's with a small e. So I guess I don't have that capital E existence. And this kid wasn't ready for that. I don't know, I wonder what happened to him. This is 35 years ago. He's now some, 55, 60-year-old. I don't know. Maybe he's thinking about retirement in New Jersey. I don't know. He's going to move to Florida. I don't know. Who knows? Right? So on one hand, it's chaval, that he didn't have the breitkeit to fight through that. On the other hand, it's really an astounding thing to say, that he understood what it means to believe in God. If there's a God, then there's no me. Oh, well, there is a me. Okay, that's bittul yesh. There is a me, but I want to be mavatal myself even on that level. Again, bittul doesn't mean that I'm a nothing. Adarabba, bittul is what allows me to connect to what's real. Well, you're really a something. You're not being buttal because you want to be a something, but that you're actually connected to something absolute and real. It's amazing. So the first level of miracle was the bittul yesh. The second level of miracle is a level of a revelation of even higher level. Ad kedei kach, there's a revelation of a level that the Greek can't see. She'einu noisen makom lemenagid. It's a place that doesn't give that doesn't give any pretext to the opposition. The kishapach hu chosim b'chosim. Right, that when this pach is sealed with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, which relates to a level of holiness beyond what the Greek can perceive, the Greek can't touch that place to defile it. It's transcendent of his power. There were all sorts of levels in the base of Mikdash, interestingly enough, that the Greek could defile. He couldn't defile that flask of oil. He can't touch there. Because he doesn't exist there. Such an amazing idea. The forces of limitation don't exist where the Pach of Shemen comes from, because the Pach of Shemen comes from a place beyond limitation. What's the Greek all about? Limitation. Sophisticated limitation, but limitation. We talked about this a number of times. That's why the Greeks were so into sport. Right? I mean, they sort of invented it, basically. Right? What's sport? Sport is all about transcendence in limitation. It's not true transcendence. People, by definition, Greeks, Jews, everybody has a natural inclination to be connected to the transcendent. So that's our source. That's where we come from. Okay, but what can happen? I can want that transcendence to be expressed in limitation. sport. Right? The guy's jumping over the bar. No one else jumped over a bar as high in the air as this guy. You and I will probably watch. I mean, if we're in front of it, and I might not turn on the TV to watch because I might not even have one. Okay, but if I'm walking down the street, and this is like the old days, it doesn't happen anymore. In the old days, every appliance store had a television in the window that was on facing the street. So no one had computers in their breast pocket, right? Okay, so if you wanted to, if there happened to be a football game on Sunday morning and you were walking along the street, it would be in the appliance store. In Canada, what mattered in the appliance store? Living on the west coast of Canada, when there were no hockey teams on the west coast, there were just 6 in the east, 4 in America and 2 in Canada. So at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, hockey night in Canada came on with the playoff game. What would everybody do as they left work at 5 o'clock? You'd see, the weather wasn't so bad, it was the west coast, it was like this, rainy, right? It wasn't cold. You'd see 10, 15 people around the television and appliance store watching a hockey game before they drove home in between periods. That was what every appliance store had, those people hanging around. Okay, so sometimes Sunday in the summer, you'd walk by the appliance store. The appliance store was closed because nothing was open on Sunday in those days, okay, but they still had the television on in the window. And what was everybody watching? Some guy about to attempt a world record at jumping over a bar with a pole or without a pole, whatever he was doing. So this guy's in his underwear and he's going to jump over a bar. Does that ring a bell? Right? And he's going to jump over this bar. Now, in all fairness, I'll just take a step back objectively. This is a rather bizarre activity, isn't it? Some guy's in underwear is going to try to jump over a bar. This is Greek, right? This is where it comes from. Okay, say that. But you and I will probably, if you ask, there's 15 people around there, and you walk by, and now, in the old days, you weren't afraid of talking to people you didn't know, so you would ask them. You didn't expect any of them to have a gun or want to steal or rob from you. That didn't happen. I don't remember having a key to my front door growing up. I don't think I had a key because I don't think the door was ever locked. Right? You don't lock your car. In this country, you didn't have to lock your car until Oslo. I never locked my car until we made a peace treaty. Then everybody had to start locking their car because they were being stolen and taken to the Palestinian Authority. At a certain point, you couldn't get insurance on a Ford Transit van. No insurance company would give you, they'd give you insurance for collision, but not for theft. Because they were stealing every Ford Transit van. Evidently, it was a hot item in the Palestinian Authority. So you couldn't get insurance on it because it would be stolen and driven into Ramallah, and that was the end of it. When they were negotiating, so one of the major Israeli negotiators had his car stolen at some point. He went to Jericho, because that's where the negotiations were happening, in Jericho. So he went to Jericho to meet his Palestinian counterpart, and they parked their cars outside the hotel in Jericho, where the peace negotiations were happening, and he looked at the car that his Palestinian counterpart was driving, and he said, "Where'd you get that car?" I said, "I bought it last week in Ramallah." I said, "Oh, it might be mine." Because I had a car like that was stolen. This made the Israeli press. Everybody was talking about this story. Whatever this is, 1992, 93, right? So the guy says, "Look, I'm telling you right now, in the trunk, there's a mark on the left side." He gave a very clear distinguishing mark that's in the car that no one would know if they didn't own the car. He said, when you open up the trunk, that's there, so that's my car. So he opens it, sure enough, it's there. So he gave him the car. He said, "Oh, fine, okay, fine, yeah, take it home. Good, yeah, no problem." He hitched back to Ramallah and he bought himself a Mercedes. You could buy a Mercedes in Ramallah in those days for $2,000. Right? They'd be stolen off the street in Tel Aviv, and you just go buy it in Ramallah. I mean, you couldn't go to Ramallah because you'd get killed, but I'm saying the guy living in Ramallah couldn't buy it. Right? So that's what was going on around here. Okay, so in those days, no one locked their doors, and everybody was, you could talk to people on the street. You didn't have to think they wanted to kill you. So you'd ask them, "What's going on?" And they'd say, "Oh, this guy from Poland is trying to set the world high jump record. 9 out of 10 people will stay there and watch. Why? It's very fascinating to see if someone's going to do something that no one else has ever done. That's a very, wow, no one ever did this? No. And this guy's trying to do it? Wow, I'll watch that. Does he do it? And we're all rooting for him. Never heard of the guy, aren't interested in high jumping, generally walk around in more clothes than he's wearing. Right? We'll still watch and we'll probably root for him, unless he's Russian. If he was a Russian, you'd root against him because you don't want the Russians to, right? But if he was a Pole, maybe he's a Russian because he's a Pole, but in those days now they were probably, trying to free themselves from the Russians, so you're probably on the Pole's side. Okay, right? That's just a natural human desire for transcendence. So the Greeks chop that, but where do they put it? In limitation. This guy jumped over the thing. What did he do? He set a new bar of limitation. That's all. He didn't transcend anything. It's just a new state of limitation, right? But guess what? Someone's going to transcend that at some point. And it's probably been transcended since I walked down the street as a 14-year-old in Vancouver watching that on some Sunday morning. It's probably been broken how many times in the last 50 years? Right? A new state of limitation, a new state of... It's not real. That the Greek sells. That's can't deal with true limitation, true beyond limitation. I can't. No. He'll transcendence. Fine. Sports. Set a new scoring record that no one will break. No one will break. What a ridiculous idea. No one will break. No such thing.
Right?
Yeah.
So the first word.
Yes, you have an existence, and yourself is separate. You see yourself as okay. Context of the world, because it's still possible within the context of the world to find a flask of oil, right? I mean, this miracle was the source of it is transcendence. But it's still expressed in the context of. After all, they looked around for it. They looked around and they found it. This wasn't Mesiras Nefesh on their part. The Mesiras Nefesh was over, so to speak, and they won the battle. Okay, now what? Okay, now they're just trying to put the Beis Hamikdash back together. So after putting the Beis Hamikdash back together, so then they're looking around for some oil to lighten the menorah, and a new level of miracle happens. On one hand, it's a level of miracle that the source is completely transcendent. Completely, such that it's a place where the Greek can't touch. On the other hand, it's clothed, they found the flask of oil that was there before. Right? It's not that all of a sudden they were looking on the floor and poof, a complete, total destruction of the natural order happens and a miracle and oil shows up. No, that's not what happened. It was there. They found it. Okay. And all the more so, this whole idea, the chosim b'chosma shel Kohen Gadol, that it was sealed with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest. But pnimius inyanim, what is this in inner meaning? Shu or kazeh, it's a level of light. She'ein achitzonim yichelim, that the negative forces, external forces, are not able liga sham klal. They can't touch that place at all. Aval, but there's an aval. Gam neis zeb, also this miracle. It's coming from a place that's completely transcendent, just like the victory in the war. But this miracle also, is still clothed in the garments of nature to a certain degree, not as much as the war, but they found it. It was there. It was there in nature. It wasn't that supernaturally this thing appeared that wasn't there before. No, it was there. They just found it. It's not that it appeared. They found it. So this is still not a miracle that goes completely out of the notion of the natural order. Finding it is supernatural, but they found something that exists. And that's why it says in the Mimer, that this middle, the second miracle, what's it corresponding to? the second level of the unity of God. Yichudi law. That the world is godliness. That there is a world, but the world is godliness. Not that the world is separate from God and I have to somehow serve God in it. No, the world is godliness. But there's still a world. Hu Yehudi law. Right? It's the level of upper level unity. There is a state of separateness, but that state of separateness is truly unified. It's really all one. It just looks like something else, but it's really all one. Right? Yehuda Tata is what? No, there's a reality of separateness. It's existing. That's what God created. And the purpose of that is to serve God. That's Yehuda Tata. The second level is the separateness doesn't really exist. It's all one. But it's there. All of that stuff is one. Not Yachid, not only one, right? As we explained earlier in the Mayanot. Havaya de Latata, the lower level of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Let's go 2 more minutes, we'll finish this paragraph, and then we'll probably finish the Mayanot tomorrow, we'll see. Ki Lagave Shem Havaya, relative to Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is the source of godly light, Ein Nesinas Makom L'Menaged. There's no place for opposition. Aval, but, Mikol Makom, nevertheless, Gam Shem Avaya, even the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Latata, again, the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, that's this responsible for the godly light that powers the existence of the world. So really the world is that godly light. But there's a world that is really that godly light. Hu Makar Li Savas is the source of bringing into being. What's it bringing into being? A world. Something that, so to speak, looks like something else. Not really something else, but looks that way. And then afterwards, what's the third level? And we'll talk about this more tomorrow. Nimshach ha'or ba'ofen nai. So there's an even higher revelation of light. There's this progressive level of revelation in Hanukkah. First, the revelation of God in the world. Second, the revelation that God is the world. Third, that it lit 8 days. The this nace is not clothed in nature in any way, shape, or form. It's complete obliteration of the laws of nature. There is no world on that level. Gilui Havaya, a revelation of Havaya de La'ela, of completely transcendent godly reality, Kemeshu L'mayla Mislavshus, as it is beyond being expressed in this world in any way that makes sense in this world, or is somehow colored by this world. Even finding the Pach Shemen. I found it, I can find my keys, I found the Pach Shemen, that happens in the world. Okay, Seder, this is miraculous that I found it. Yes, it's definitely miraculous. No question. And anybody with a brain will understand that. But it's still happening in the world. The third level doesn't fit in any understanding of reality in terms of how the world works. Oil doesn't burn for 8 days if it's only supposed to burn for 1. That's an obliteration of the laws of nature. Not being clothed in the laws of nature.
Why it's still being done through a physical.
Even that, interestingly enough, is an interesting question, because that physical object is not acting in any way, shape, or form like a physical object is supposed to act. So even that physical object is going completely beyond its natural state. So it has to be that physical object in order for the mitzvah to take place. It has to be olive oil, but it's not. Olive oil is not acting like olive oil.
Right.
It is olive oil, but it's not acting that way.
And with the war, can't one technically say like the same thing? Like they weren't acting in the normal way by 5 people killing like 30,000.
But they still had to kill them. I can win a war, al pi teva. Obviously, I won this war in a level that's completely beyond nature. I get it. There's no question. But the act itself is an act that can happen in teva. Oil burning for 8 days can't happen in teva. There's no such thing. Winning a war, that can happen. Can few beat many? Well, it depends how few and how many. But you could. You and I realize that it's completely miraculous. Okay. 6-day war. Miracle or teva? Well, you and I will say a miracle. Could someone explain it al pi teva? Well, yeah, but you and I would say it's a miracle. There's all sorts of people who say no, it's teva. I think most of us would say. I think actually most of us would even, the Yom Kippur War is even more miraculous. Right? Once you appreciate the miracle of it. Why? Because the teva was such a disaster. The teva of it was worse because we didn't strike first. And we let them, the Syrians were 20 minutes from Tiberia. They would have taken over Tiberia in 20 minutes if they hadn't thought that it was a trap. Mm-hmm. Who made them think it was a trap? Okay, you and I will say, I think God did that. Other people say, no, I don't know. They just made a terrible mistake. Terrible mistake? War. Are we lucky they made that terrible mistake? My goodness gracious. They would have taken out 20 minutes from Tiberia. And they thought it was a trap. They said, it can't be that they must be waiting for us. So they stopped. Gave us enough time to go climb the hill and fight them back. Avigdor Kalani, right? Ended up a minister in the government because of his heroism. He just took some soldiers and started walking up the hill. They were right there in the middle of the hill. I just walked up and beat them somehow. Okay, you and I will probably say that was miraculous. Okay, but it can be explained in nature. Avigdor Kalani will probably say it was miraculous because he's not an Ashkenazi. The guy who led the troops. He became famous afterwards because he ended up being a minister in the government, which is what happens to most successful generals in this country. Some of them are good, some of them are bad ministers, but they generally end up ministers. Okay. But you can definitely look at that as just incredible mazel and look at it all in natural terms. Or you can experience the miracle of it all. Why did they stop? We made an unbelievable mistake, there's no doubt about it. And that mistake cost the lives of 2,000 people between the ages of 18 and 20. Because who died? All the Sidonikim. The guys in the regular army, they're the guys that died. Why? Because they didn't call up the Miluimnikim. Why? Because they didn't want to look bad in the eyes of the world. What they said in their meeting in the kitchen, in Goldamir's kitchen, it's all recorded, right? So these people were responsible for the death of a couple of thousand people. Okay. Someone's responsible for the death of those couple of thousand people who died a year and a bit ago. Someone made a really bad decision. Basically, it looks like the decision looks this way. No one knows for sure. We'll find out sooner or later. Yes, soon it'll come out. Who knows? You never know. But it looks like those people who were in charge hated Bibi more than they liked other things and were willing to sacrifice. If they didn't think it was going to be 2,000, they thought it would be a few people. Sacrifice a few people in order to get rid of Bibi Netanyahu. Looks like what happened. They miscalculated. A couple of thousand people. Okay. Are they going to pay the price? They never do. Those people never pay the price, ever, in any country. It's so interesting. They just seem to never pay the price. They're like Teflon. The people who make those kind of decisions in most countries. Just astounding. Are the people who, people who are responsible for what's going on in America over the last 4 years, are they going to pay the price?